All right. Hey, thanks for joining us. This is Let's Talk with John Kane, usually with Regan DeLoggins, but she's backed up on some stuff at work, and she had to give us a pass this week, or I gave her a pass, I should say. So I am going to have some co-hosts today. I'm going to come to you. So we're going to do callers today. We haven't done them in 6 months for a variety of reasons, so I look forward to that. And I know some of you got some stuff to say, especially after last week's show. So I look forward to doing that. I'll give you the number, even though I've got some other stuff to cover first. But just so you have it, it's 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of the show. And I'm going to try to do a good 40 plus minutes of calls. So I'd like to get through as many as possible because it has been so long. So look, I'm hoping we can, you can make your point, we can have a discussion and move on to the next caller as much as possible. So, all right. I also have to do this. It is imperative that people realize that WBAI is listener-supported radio, and we do need your support to stay on the air. I need your support to stay on the air because, look, I mean, even though when I fundraise and I pitch for WBAI, it is for the WBAI bills. It's not for me. I mean, I'm not ever pitching on WBAI for anybody to send me any money. I'm saying you've got to support WBAI, and when you support WBAI as a listener of this program and make that clear that you're a listener of this program, it kind of gives me a bit of a boost in the eyes of management. And when very little money comes in off of this show, it sends a different signal. So, look, we have done well on producing BAI buddies in the past. I don't know where we're at now with that, but I really wish many of you who are listening who will sign up and become a BAI buddy in the name of Let's Talk. You can go to the pledge line, 516-620-3602. You can go online. You can go to www.give2wbai.org. That's GIVE, the number 2, WBAI.org. Make a pledge of any size. You can do a one-time donation. You can do a donation whenever you can. Or, like I said, you can become a BAI buddy in the name of this program. I'm counting on you to do that because that's why they put me on the air. They put me on the air to generate listenership, to generate conversation, and hopefully generate some support for the show and for the station. So I'm counting on you to seal my spot here. And in the absence of that, you get fundraising shows. So I'm trying to get away from having to do that, and I'm going to give a mention on every show that people need to support the program, and support the radio station. So again, 516-620-3602. That's the number to call to make a donation of any size. Become a BAI buddy. Join the station. Be a part of the station, and make a donation. 516-620-3602. All right. Before I go to the phone calls, I at least have to mention the debate, and I'm not going to give a critique of the debate. You all saw that that circus, train wreck, whatever you want to call it, that's media spectacle. I guess what concerns me is that it was promoted as such a media spectacle, and I think because Trump, love him or hate him, he is like watching a car accident. I mean, you can't not watch him, it seems like. And so it becomes all-consuming. Many of us, who would normally have done something else, tuned into watch that craziness on television. And there was nothing gained from it. I mean, yeah, you get a little bit of a personality, a look at personalities, both of Biden and Trump, but there was no real information. You didn't gain anything. You didn't learn anything from this thing. It was really just. It really was a waste of time. I mean, there's so much conversation about not doing any more of them because it was so bad. And of course, both sides have claimed victory, and Trump will sing his praises about how wonderful he did and that kind of stuff, and of course Biden will just continue to talk about what a disaster Trump is. But what concerns me is that even Native people, even the people that tune into my shows, my Let's Talk Native shows, my podcasts, my videos, even all of those people, or many of those people, felt compelled to watch this. It becomes all-consuming, even for many of us who don't consider that our system. It just kind of draws you in. I mean, it's it's like WrestleMania is the big analogy ever people made, but it really is, watching something that is unpleasant to watch, but you just kind of get sucked into it. So, look, I know that people are probably going to want to weigh in. They're going to have some thoughts on what they witnessed with this debate. Last week, Regan and I, gave a pretty harsh, criticism. Look, not only do I have some major issues with Ruth Bader Ginsburg because of a specific ruling that she made regarding the Oneidas, and my wife's Oneida, so I mean I'm kind of close to the whole case. But she, even as a Jewish liberal court justice, she cited the doctrine of Christian discovery in footnote number 1 of that case, and that's really problematic. But it doesn't stop there. And the reason I linked even the Breonna Taylor case to this was because, for all, I saw the same people who were changing their profile pictures to RBG and had all this praise for Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who were also switching back and forth to Breonna Taylor profile pictures and say her name and no justice, no peace. But I had to remind people that when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was doing her book tour and was out on television making all her stops, I think Katie Couric asked her about Colin Kaepernick's protests, and she called it dumb. She basically said it was ridiculous to protest in the way that Colin Kaepernick was protesting, and never even addressed what he was protesting. So if you are outraged that there was no indictment for any of the officers in the killing of Breonna Taylor, you should be pissed off at Ruth Bader Ginsburg, because the very guy who jeopardized and basically lost his career trying to raise attention to death by cop, to police violence, she called dumb. She said it was ridiculous. She said he was disrespectful. So, and look, I had people that were saying, yeah, but she apologized for that later, or the Oneida case. Oh yeah, no, she didn't. I didn't see anybody produce the so-called apology. Look, did she express some level of remorse for some of her bad decisions in her book that she sold to make money? I don't know, maybe she did, but I didn't see any of that text. So that's kind of what both Reed and I were addressing last week. And the other thing that I had to mention last week is, for all of those people who are concerned that now Trump is going to have loaded the court to the right, you should be pissed off that Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't retire when she was 80 years old, when Obama was the president. I mean, what do you think Kennedy did? Kennedy retired so Trump would have another Supreme Court nominee that would be young and would load that court with conservatives for decades. Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't have enough foresight to do that, and of course nobody was going to pressure her to leave the court in her 80s. So she dies during the Trump administration, and so now that so-called liberal stalwart is going to be replaced by conservative hack. Well, there you go. And people can complain that it's somehow wrong for Trump to fill that vacancy, but those are the same people who thought it was wrong for Obama to be denied filling a vacancy in an election year. So anyway, those were some of the thoughts, and I know it would have been great to take calls, but look, we're a 1-hour show, so we don't have quite as much time as we once had when we were a 2-hour show. So I want to throw some of those things out there. Look, we haven't talked in a long time. We've done a lot of mascot issues. There's been a lot of, political debate. COVID-19 obviously has been a major issue. It's kind of one of the things that frustrates me about the debate is it's a distraction from all these things that are really important. I mean, 1 million people have died worldwide, and that's like a footnote. As the United States numbers continue to rack up, well over 200,000 dead, and millions. I mean, they represent the largest percentage of any other country. And anybody who would suggest that that Trump's handling of COVID-19 has been anything but an absolute failure is is really delusional. But again, so these are the distractions, the economy, all these things that are happening. Some of them COVID related, but some of them are Trump's policies. But and instead, we get inundated with this crazy thing that they called a political debate, which was essentially anything but that. But anyway, those are some of the things I'll throw out there. Let me give the number out again. It's 212-209-2877. That's the number to call. Look, I understand that there's things that I say that some people aren't going to agree with, and I'm okay with that. I just think it's important to have the debate. When we're talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg, there should be some balance to all the praise that she's getting. And people should, kind of get a grip instead of embellishing her career as if she was this, this full-time dissenter in the court. She wasn't. And so I'll say the same thing about anybody, right or left. We as Native people, we've experienced oppression from the Democrats every bit as much as we have from the Republicans. I throw these things out there. I got to remind people that Obama was responsible. It was his administration that was on watch when the Dakota Access Pipeline was being built. Kennedy, authorized the Kinzua Dam and the Army Corps of Engineers condemning 10,000 acres of Seneca land. When Clinton was running for the presidency, when she was asked about things like Dakota Access Pipeline and Keystone XL Pipeline and these pipelines that Native people were protesting, all she could say was, well, she supported these kinds of federal infrastructure projects. So, look, and I'm not saying this just to beat up on the Democrats. There's no question to me that Trump is one of the worst human beings to ever sit in the White House. But there has to be fair criticism on both sides. And so oftentimes, as a Native person who I regard myself as a little bit outside of that fray, I'm going to offer my opinions based on being a spectator, not a participant. So, all right, so let me go give the number out one more time, 212-209-2877. Reggie, we got anybody on the line?
Not yet.
Really? Oh, okay. Well, I guess I'll keep going then.
Give it a moment. Let it marinate.
I know we haven't done this in so long. Look, since COVID-19 struck, it really made it impossible for us to do some of the remote broadcasting and handle phone calls at the same time. So again, for those of you, I know that I must have ruffled some feathers last week, and so did Regan, I'm sure, with some of our commentary. So look, I'm giving people a crack at us, or look, maybe you agreed with what we had to say, but I think these are some of the things that are conversations that we need to have, and too often, look, I'm actually doing battle many times with some of my own people because this crime of genocide isn't limited to just killing people and sterilizing and ripping children out of homes. No, assimilation, especially assimilation that is designed specifically with the intent of making a people cease to exist as those people. And injecting the national character. I mean, somebody says, "Well, I thought sovereignty was only lost when we lost federal recognition." Well, let me be clear. Federal recognition is defined as a tribe, band, or nation of Indians subordinate to the laws of the United States. It is anything but a testament to sovereignty. It is basically the way the federal government sweetens up subjugation. Say, "Oh yeah, we recognize you as a tribe and your members." They don't recognize us as a distinct people. They are trying to impose their citizenship upon us. That's why I get into a debate over things like voting, military enlistment, and so much of the other processes of assimilation, religion, and many of the people that I end up having to do battle with are some of my own people. I think it's fascinating that when I have somebody, a co-host like Regan, who comes from a different people, a different region. She has she's a Native person living in the city. Or if I have somebody like Janine Yazzie from Navajo territory, it's amazing to me that in spite of the geography and in spite of the whatever cultural differences between native peoples to native peoples are, we can. There are people who agree with some of the sentiment. Not everybody. Look, I've got some true blue Democrat, friends who are native that are out there trying to promote get out the vote. They'll tell you how much they hate Joe Biden, but he's better than Trump, so they're gonna try to push. And I always have to say the same thing. The bottom line is there is no place, there is no state that the native vote will turn a red state blue or a blue state red for that matter. So, for those of us who get engaged in this battle, especially in states like New York or California, those states are going to go for Biden no matter what, just like they went for Hillary Clinton. Your vote is almost meaningless in those states. The only states where the vote is really significant are the swing states. I mean, let me take that back. The only place where the vote is significant for the presidential race are the swing states. And down ballot. Look, if you look at this election as as what you can do locally, it would make more sense for you to vote down ballot and just skip, trying to give even Joe Biden a mandate. The danger in all this is that whoever wins this election is going to feel victorious and validated in everything that they've done. And look, from a native perspective, a rich, wealthy, somewhat senile white guy is going to be the president no matter what. And that's just the way it's going to play out.
And with that said, John, we do have callers on the line. So whenever I'm sorry to break in.
No, by all means, I look forward to. I've missed being able to talk to callers, even if some of them are a little, maybe a little distraught with me. So let's get right to it. Go ahead and give me the first caller. Caller,
okay.
What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hi, John. This is Arnold from Peekskill. How you doing?
Arnold, geez, I feel like we've just been missing each other.
Yeah. Anyway, in regard to Ruth Bader Ginsburg, I was never personally enamored by her. I thought she was just another corporate Democrat.
Well, and again, for me, when she, as a what is considered a liberal darling of the court, cited the doctrine of Christian discovery and basically went after the Oneida, saying, "Look, you can't reclaim your land."
Yep.
And that case was dreadful. It was not just a bad ruling or a ruling that I didn't agree with. Technically, it was wrong. One of the main reasons she cited for beyond her underlying feeling about the doctrine of Christian discovery, that we simply don't have the right to own land because white people discovered us. Yeah, that's literally what the doctrine of discovery is. But beyond that, she cited this thing called the Doctrine of Impossibility. She cited a Yankton Sioux case that was about almost 100 years ago now, where they were trying to sue white people off of land. And the court said, no, it's impossible to disrupt people living on these lands and to reclaim lost land. And so they developed this thing called the Doctrine of Impossibility. Now, with the Oneida case, they actually dismissed that legal argument because they said, no, they weren't displacing anybody. They bought the land in the open market. But Ruth Bader Ginsburg says, no. It is, that case still stands, the Yankton Sioux case. It is really impossible for a native territory, once lost control over a piece of property, could reclaim it. Now, what makes her ruling so wrong about this is in Seneca territory, where I live now, they actually had a lease settlement act called the Salamanca Lease Settlement Act. Passed through Congress, which paid the Senecas not a lot of money, like $90 million or so, for a bad lease where the municipality of Salamanca was on the Allegheny territory of the Seneca Nation. But included in that Lease Settlement Act was a provision that absolutely allowed the Senecas to reclaim land, not as trust land, but take it back in as original title, Seneca title land. And they're being allowed to use the money that in the settlement to reclaim some of that land. So Ginsburg was wrong. I mean, not only does she cite, a case 1,300 miles away and 80 years prior, but a case only 10 or 15 years old, 200 miles down the road, that where the Senecas and the Oneidas were related, we're all Haudenosaunee, where there was a clear pathway that went beyond the fee to trust application process, where Native people could reclaim lost land. So it was a wrong decision. It was a racist decision. I mean, look, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples calls doctrines like the Doctrine of Discovery legally invalid, racist, scientifically false, legally morally condemnable. That's what the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, calls the very doctrine that she, that she cited. So, yeah, that's why I had a problem. My biggest problem with it. But there are some other cases too. I mean, she ruled in a case that that basically validated the Washington football team's use of a racial slur. I mean, there's some other rulings that were not very good, and for the most part, she ruled with the majority, like 90% of the time. So anyway, but any other thoughts?
Oh no, I think you just answered it. I don't get into these, cult of personalities.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court, and change doesn't, come from it comes from the grassroots. It comes from the grassroots. If you look at Brown versus Board of Education, Topeka, Kansas, it was one who in the old said segregation was illegal was Justice Earl Warren. He was a conservative, anti-communist judge, and so change doesn't really come from below. Come out the Supreme Court, comes from below.
Yeah, and I think there sometimes is so much of an emphasis, and even what people praise as stare decisis and this idea that settled law should not ever be disrupted, especially when they talk about things like abortion. Look, there's some bad cases. There's some bad rulings, and frankly, if you're a person of color, a Native person, you've experienced some of those bad rulings. And even Clarence Thomas once suggested that the whole notion of the plenary powers of Congress over Native affairs, giving them the authority to regulate the metes and bounds of tribal sovereignty, he says he didn't see any place in the Constitution. I mean, and I'm not a big fan of Clarence Thomas, but just simply looking at the law, he himself said, I don't see. He suggested that he wished there was something in the Constitution and that Congress should act to make sure that that they have the power to regulate Native people. But as the Constitution was written and as laws are have been enacted, there's nothing that suggests that that's even true. So, well, thanks a lot, Arnold. It's good to hear from you,
okay,
and
John.
Hopefully we'll get you back again. All right, Reggie, we got another one on the line.
Yes, we do.
All right, let's go to it. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
It's Peter in Tampa.
Hi, Peter. It's good to hear from you.
Yeah, I've been champing at the bit to trying to call you. I can't do it. Frustrating. You bring up these topics, and I go on away, and so I'm not going to do it all at once. But just like tie up the first time I called you, it was I referred to James J. Hill that when he built his railroad, he bought all the land, whatever. He didn't do it through conquest at all. And you said something interesting. Yeah, it's a running theme with you. It's like you can defeat people not through battle, but by swindling them. And hey, did he follow through? Did he pay them? Did he lie? And we don't look at that. Then it came up the Black Hawk massacre. That was about swindling too. I mean, it turned into warfare when someone said, "Wait a minute, you got the natives drunk," and and so just to bring it to the present, everyone's talking about absentee ballot, and everyone's aware about the way it's easy to swindle by manipulating data. Mm-hmm. But also now bring it up to Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You talked about doctrine of original discovery. It's like, yeah, you can conquer a whole nation by swindling by the words you use. It's words are the weapon.
Well, it's just strange to have to hear a Jewish person who supports Israel in the way that she does, and their claim for a 2,000-year-old land claim suggests that
Right.
that Native people simply don't have the right to hold title to land once Christians laid eyes on us on our lands. I mean, it is a bizarre proposition, and for a Jewish woman to cite it is even more peculiar. I mean, it's you're right, and when you cite church dogma. I mean, because one of the things that I always get frustrated with, I hear people say, "Well, the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, that's it's a suggestion. It's an aspirational document. It has no force of law." Well, you know what? Papal bulls shouldn't have had any force of law either, but they gave them force of law, and essentially Ruth Bader Ginsburg citing it in 2005 reaffirms that codification of a racist doctrine that originates from the church. And look, if you can cite a church doctrine, an ancient church doctrine at that, one that validated slavery and genocide, it seems to me that it shouldn't be a stretch for any of these justices to cite some of the articles within the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples.
Right. It's really, words, you can use them for whatever you want. What did Bertrand Russell said? If you want to change the world, change your metaphors. In other words, the power of language. That's where it's at. So, Orwell. I mean, it's like that's the weapon of the 20th century and before.
Yeah. Well, and on your original point with the railroads, there's no question that when people say most of native lands were purchased, I mean, a lot of them were absolutely swindled. There was this whole era of leases where non-native people were suggesting, "Oh no, we don't want to own your land. We just want to lease it for 100 years or even 1,000 years, believe it or not." And then would make the argument that lease was like a sale. And the other thing is, because we never had any standing in the U.S. court systems or in the U.S. legal system, if somebody violated the terms of that lease, like not paying, we had no recourse. And so oftentimes what the legislatures, state and federal legislatures would do, if we were making an argument that somebody was in default of a lease, they would try to just renegotiate the new lines on where our native territories stopped and started, and offer some rudimentary compensation that oftentimes never came through. By the way, this is the same thing. There's a lot documented about how much native people were screwed in Canada as they expanded their railroad going west as well. So, Peter, I want to thank you. It's always good to hear from you. It's nice to have a listener from Tampa participate in the program. So, thanks again for listening and supporting the program.
Okay, take care.
All right. Reggie, we got anybody else on the line at this point?
Yes, we do.
All right. Let me give the number out one more time just so we don't run out of people. 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of this show. I also want to remind people that to make a donation to Let's Talk, or actually to make a donation to to WBAI in the name of Let's Talk, you can dial 516-620-3602. That's 516-620-3602 to donate, and it's 212-209-2877 to talk. So, all right, we'll do one more caller quick, and then we'll take a break and come right back for more callers. Caller, you're up next. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Sandra from Manhattan.
Well, thanks for calling and being a part of the program. What's on your mind?
I agree. Ruth Bader Ginsburg's decision to remain on the Supreme Court was incredibly selfish, and it was absolutely dumb. She had already had a bout with cancer, and she should have left at the end of President Obama's first term.
And almost nobody brought that. Nobody's brought that up, and that's why I'm a little surprised that even if you were a fan of Ruth Bader Ginsburg and the positions that she represented, it seemed to me that why didn't anybody think that at 80 in her 80s was probably enough service and should have moved on and allowed Obama to have another pick.
Really, I still don't understand it. It just boggles my mind. I don't know how long she thought she was going to live, and I'm not being facetious about this, but we have to be strategic.
Well, and there's a certain
And
there's a certain privilege that you have to probably recognize here. I mean, look, I know people say that she was a champion for women's rights and that kind of stuff, but look, her life was a pretty good life of privilege, and sitting on that Supreme Court is like the ultimate privilege, and obviously something within her, whether it was her ego or her drive, whatever you want to call it, didn't want to give that up, and even after serving 2 decades, she insisted on pushing it, as far as her body could push it, and so now you're going to end up with with a conservative in her seat.
we're between a rock and a hard place on this one, and it was avoidable.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
I just can't wrap my mind around that.
Well, I want to thank you for making the call and and look, I'm glad you agree with me, and there may be some people out there who don't agree, but I just think it is a travesty that there wasn't enough strategic planning. Look, the court is political, and so you've got to play the politics, and and I hope Breyer has enough sense to retire if Biden manages to get elected, and maybe people on the right will be bitching about Clarence Thomas for not retiring during Trump's reign. Who knows? All right. Hey, again, thanks a lot for the call. I appreciate it. Look, we're going to take a quick break. We'll go out on a little Murray tune, I assume, and we'll come right back to more of your calls. Again, the number is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to talk to me on Let's Talk with John Kane and normally Regan DeLoggins on WBAI. We'll be right back. Hey, look, if we lost you, if you've been gone, don't stay gone. Come on back. we do want you back. Look, I know this whole COVID-19 thing has been rough on all of us. It's been, and it's been rough on the show. Let's Talk is supposed to be a talkback show, and we haven't had a whole lot of talkback in the last 6 months. So I am happy to do it now. I've got to, once again, I ask you not only to participate in the show, but to support the show. So I'm asking you to go to the pledge line, 516-620-3602. Go to the website, www.give2wbai.org. Make a donation of any size. Make it as often as you can. This is, unlike voting, we want you to donate and donate often. We want you to make a donation of any size. You can become a buddy, and which would sign you up to make a monthly donation via your checking account or your credit card, and it look, $5, $10, $20 a month, whatever you can handle. I know that it is it's tough. I mean, there's many people are struggling financially because of this pandemic, but I know some of you aren't. And one of the things that I always reference out there is, as a Native person, I know that there's lobbying firms, there are law firms, there are consultants, some right in the New York City area that have made lucrative careers off of Native people. If you're any of those people, look, this is one of the few shows of its kind. In fact, it may be the only show of its kind. And it's one of the few Native voices on the East Coast. And we do try to raise issues. Look, I realize that I'm almost a bit of an outlier when it comes to the views that I express on this program. I'm not just trying to be a good a descendant of a Native person. I am not an American of Native descent. I am a Native person. I'm Ungwe. And so the points that I try to make are coming at this from somebody outside of the political systems, outside of the American culture. Look, am I affected by it? Absolutely I am. But I am as much of a spectator in much of what I'm witnessing as I am a participant. So again, if you can make a donation, do so. The number again, 516-620-3602. That's the number to call to support Let's Talk with John Kane and Regan DeLoggins right here on WBAI. Hey, while I'm at it here, let me give a shout out. Tomorrow, if you're in the Washington D.C. area, or if you perhaps peruse other Pacifica stations, I'm on WPFW at 2 p.m. In the afternoon, 2 p.m. Tomorrow on Fridays. With my Let's Talk Native show. So look, if you scour through Pacifica stations, check out our sister station. I know we share some news feed, and and again, it was suggested by our program director to the WPFW program director that perhaps they might want to consider my voice on their station as well. So you can catch Let's Talk Native at 2 p.m. on WPFW in Washington, D.C. as well. All right, number to call to talk, to have a conversation is 212-209-2877. That's the number to call to be a part of Let's Talk with John Kane. Caller, we got another caller right there, Reg?
Yep.
All right, caller, you're up next. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Hey, John. It's Jeff from Union County, New Jersey. How are you?
Hey, how you doing?
It's been a long time.
It does, and if as these voices come through, people that have called before, they're nice, friendly, and familiar voices, and it's great to hear from you as well. What's on your mind?
Well, I'll tell you, like I said, it's been a long time. If you humor me, I have a few quick points I'd like to make.
Please go ahead.
Well, number one, if anybody from the BAI brass is listening to the show, they got to put you on for at least a 2-hour minimum show. I mean, I've been listening to BAI for 8-10 years now. I mean, going back to Hugh Hamilton when he had Talkback, everybody's been given at least a 2-hour format, and your show needs it.
Well, I know it is tough because if we want to do a guest, if we want to really delve into a topic, it's nice that we can spend an hour doing that and then opening up the phone lines or perhaps even going farther with phone lines, an hour and a half. Because I don't like just having somebody call in and make a quick comment and then push them off the air. I want to engage the caller, such as yourself. So I appreciate that. All right, you got more points. Go ahead.
Okay, absolutely. I want to take the rare occasion to disagree with you on one thing you said today, and that's about the debates. You said they didn't prove anything. I think they did. I think they proved that neither one of those clowns is fit to lead this country.
Yeah. I guess I can't disagree with that. I think it was.
I'm sorry to say, but I mean, Biden let Trump get under his skin. If he's that thin-skinned, how's he going to run a country at a time of crisis?
Well, I don't know. I'm not going to express a whole lot of sympathy for Biden in this situation because there's a lot in Biden's history that I find very, very problematic, and including some relatively racist comments that have been made in the past. And is he the lesser of two evils? Yeah, probably. But here's the problem. I mean, if you're gonna vote for the lesser of two evils, you're still voting for an evil. And the biggest thing for me is if for all those people who think that it's so absurd and outrageous that Donald Trump managed to grab the seat of power in Washington, if your response was somebody as centrist as Joe Biden, man, I gotta tell you, that's hard. That sure isn't much of a swing on that pendulum back the other way. That's all I got to say.
Well, crazy enough, I mean, I live like smack dab in the middle of Trump Central, and my neighbors think that he's a socialist and he's too far left. And I shut my mouth because you're not going to win with these people. I can't be the voice of reason in a sea of insanity.
Well, I mean, even the evangelical right. I mean, how do these churchy people look the other way on paying porn stars and screwing vendors with all of his bankruptcies and his lying on a regular basis? Well, excuse me?
It's easy. They're hypocrites.
Yeah, well, that's what it comes down to. But see, that's the mentality.
Yeah.
When you say you can't reason with any of these people or have a conversation. Look, honestly, I feel the same way about many of the Democrats. I mean, for those people who say, look, I didn't like Biden either, but he's better than Trump. Look, I'll concede a little ground on that, but if you're gonna condemn somebody like me for I'm not gonna vote in U.S. elections anyway. I don't consider myself a U.S. citizen. I don't want to cast myself as a U.S. citizen. I'm Mohawk. I'm Gunyagahaga, and I have my own people and my own community to be a part of. I don't need to throw my my meaningless vote. I always say it. There's no way that we're going to turn a red state blue, Native people that is, a red state blue or a blue state red. It just isn't going to happen. And for states like New York and California and some of the ones that are clearly going to go for one candidate or another, the vote seems even more meaningless. And of course, that doesn't even address the slave era concoction that is the not only the Electoral College, but frankly the uneven distribution of Senate seats that give a state like Kentucky, 2 Senate seats with a population a fraction of what New York or California have. I mean, this stuff doesn't even make sense. It is the farthest thing that anybody could suggest is a democracy, because I mean the popular vote doesn't affect necessarily the presidency, and it doesn't necessarily affect the other seats of power. Hell, even Congress, they had the House, when they had the 3/5 compromise, was another way to skew the system towards slave states. It's just crazy.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, again, I have to disagree with you. I mean, I'm going back to the 70s and the civil unrest, ending the Vietnam War and all. And there was a popular saying. They said, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem.
Well, but then you've got to decide whether you think voting is the solution, though. I mean,
well, it's like you said about the difference between Trump and Biden. It's incrementally small, but do you want to get better incrementally, or do you want to give this clown 4 more years to destroy this country?
Well, you know what they say. Sometimes it's got to get worse before it gets better. And if in order to have a wholesale change, sometimes you need to let people pay the price for their bad decisions. I don't know. I mean, my feeling is when you talk about civil rights and you talk about anti-war or any heck, what we're seeing now with the social justice and police brutality, it's not votes that are going to change it. It's people in the streets that are going to change it. Now, I mean, is that what's going to ultimately change? Yeah, I mean, so you've got to do more than pray and vote. That's all I've got to say. Look, if that's what you feel comfortable doing, then do it. But you got to do more than just pray and vote.
Like they say, nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something.
Well, and we can all do more than just vote. That's for sure. That's for sure.
It's absolutely true. But if I could squeeze one more thing in.
One more thing. Go ahead.
Okay, you spoke earlier about Colin Kaepernick. When the civil unrest happened in this country, where all the athletes were coming out on the field and taking a knee and this, that, and the other, it made me sick. Because where were these clowns when Colin Kaepernick was out there with his butt hanging in the wind? Not one of them. They were like the little boy that pooped his pants. They all had nothing to say.
Yeah, there were very few other athletes that stood with them.
Popular, and they had the support of their masters. They all went and did it, and that made me sick. That was, to me, the ultimate hypocrisy.
Yeah, and most of them still will not invoke Colin Kaepernick's name. Most of them won't. I mean, some of them will say, "Look, we should have." At least if you're going to admit you should have supported him, but most won't even do that. I mean, so I find a lot of that hypocritical as well. And the crazy part is, even in the one football game I saw where they were at that before the game started. Players just linked arms. It wasn't even during the national anthem, and all those fans, those football fanatics, booed them. I mean, and it just kind of shows you what a dog and pony show it really is, and it's just more of that. Shut up and dribble, shut up and play, shut up and perform for me. And I get some of that. I had somebody suggest that if I'm not a U.S. voter, then I should shut up and I shouldn't have anything to say about it. So I'm just supposed to shut up and entertain. So no, I don't go for the whole shut up and dribble thing. So I agree with you on that. All right, let me try to get at least one more caller in before I go. Thanks a lot, Jeff. It's good to hear from you. All right, caller, you're up next. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Yes, Dave from Queens.
Hey, Dave, what's going on?
I wanted to make a comment as far as the Ginsburg selectively going with the Israel's taking the land, the ancient promise, supposedly, and the decisions that she made on the court against the rights of indigenous people. It's called selective perception in psychology, where people can, select out cognitively what they want and ignore everything else. And that explains a lot of people. They don't care if Trump actually did shoot someone on Fifth Avenue. They look at they see what they want to see. But my question to you is, I just want to know your perception or your opinion as far as when I was a young boy in the 70s, my father and my brother liked to go to movies, and we used to go to these Billy Jack movies. And at that time, I was very young. I was probably 10 years old. I didn't quite understand what it was about, but it made me sympathetic to the cause. And I wanted your opinion as far as Dances with the Wolves and also Billy Jack. Did that change somewhat opinion in America towards understanding Indian rights, and even the commercial with that Indian on a horse, I believe, by the highway and the garbage? Did that have any effect?
Well, you hit a couple of things there. I guess first off, Billy Jack movies actually, look, they were part of a phenomenon, if you will, a trend in movies that really kind of highlighted, some of the plight of Native people. One of the problems that I have with things like Billy Jack or even Dancing with Wolves, it's like there's always got to be the white guy that's the hero. I mean, somehow it's always the white guy. The Native people are through those Billy Jack movies. The Native people are pretty pathetic in those movies, but
to get white people to go to that movie, unfortunately, it had to have this white knight. But I was thinking, aside from that, it kind of opened the door for me as a 10-year-old who didn't know much. I had a neighbor, for example, who did the sculptures of different tribes, and he had educated me as far as the history and the atrocities. So I went to the World Book and I looked at the the Wounded Knee, and I kind of wrote things about it, and I introduced it to class, and
look, as a kid, I was a fan of Billy Jack movies too. I got to admit, I mean, when you're young and you're impressionable, it's the closest thing, and it's one of those things that when the outside culture only throws you a little bit that you can relate to, then you cling on to it. That's why, in the early days, I mean, even though we stand up to things like mascots today, it wasn't unusual to see Native people with a Washington jacket on, or a Cleveland, baseball cap on, or a Chicago Blackhawks jersey, or something like that, because there was so very little in the dominant culture around us for us to, there was very little that we were allowed to have in many cases when you think about what kids went through in residential schools. But so yeah, these were things that that were not ours, but we could grab some sort of relationship to. And so no, I mean, look, I think at least the Billy Jack movies were addressing social justice issues, and although the character Billy Jack was half Native, he clearly was a lot of it was obviously a lot of creative license on Native culture and that kind of stuff, and it kind of fed into a lot of the New Age movement and that kind of stuff. But yeah, right. As far as the other guy, Iron Eyes Cody, and I mean, one of the things that was frustrating about that, just like with the idea of Kevin Costner being in Dance with Wolves, or Tom McLaughlin being in Billy Jack. That was a white guy who played Iron Eyes Cody. I mean, he was an Italian guy, and for all the Native people that they could have put, they turned him into an iconic figure. I mean, the tear in the eye of the Native person. It was one of the most successful public service announcements done in history. But it didn't do much to raise consciousness on Native people, but it was an effective message to condemn littering and pollution.
Wasn't it in a way saying that this America is Native Americans were the original, and they are seeing what the whites have done? That's what it spoke to me, that commercial.
Yeah, and it's great that you took that message from it. But for the most part, I think it was less of a tribute to us and more of a condemnation of behavior. And there's very little. I mean, in fact, I mean, it's a Native person, or a Native character being played by a non-Native person that that is a throwback historically. I mean, he's an anachronism. He's there in a canoe and in the modern era. So in a way, it relates us as to something as to a people who are just relics of the past, and not and that's why the mascot issue is something we battle with. Exactly. That's what he kind of was. He was kind of like a ghost. So. Hey, look, Dave, I appreciate
Thank you so much.
the call. And it's great to have you and the other callers participate in the program. I do want to remind people that we are listener supported radio. So if you can, I ask that we don't have any time for any more callers, but there's always time to call the pledge line. So 516-620-3602. That's the number to call to make a donation to WBAI in the name of Let's Talk. Do want to remind people you can catch us on WPFW, and our shows are podcasts. So you can search Let's Talk Native with John Kane podcast. You can go to our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. We have not only our shows are posted up as videos, but we do short form videos, and we are also on Patreon. So you can find us at patreon.com/Let's Talk Native. Look for us there. Thank you very much, and we'll see you next week. Nyaweh.